Hey everyone, Ryan's RS here again with part 2 of how to prep for fender flare installs. Yesterday I laid down some really boogery welds that I didn't take video of, but I'm going to try to hit it again today, get some more video of it, or at least a little bit. I'm just using a cheapo Harbor Freight, I think it's like $100 flux core welder. Yesterday I ran it on the min setting and I think it just wasn't hot enough. I was worried about blowing through the metal, but with it being a cheapo unit, I'm going to try bumping it up to max today. It's just a toggle switch. There is no middle ground or anything to play around with other than that and the wire speed. So we'll see what happens. In the end, it's not that important. It's tacked in good enough for what it needs to be. It's nothing structural. And when I hit it with the seam sealer, that'll kind of stick it together a little bit more. The big thing I'm really concerned about is just getting it somewhat tacked and ready to have the flare put on. So let's get to welding. So here we have some really bad amateur welds, a couple spots where I blew through the material, but it's, it penetrated enough that I can't just pull the tabs down, which is good enough for government work in my book. But what I'm going to do, just as peace of mind, is I'm going to go over everything with SteelStik, just to make sure everything's solid, sealed up, try to keep as much water and everything out of there before even putting the seam sealer on. All right, we all know that no build is truly complete until there's some JB weld on it. So we're going to use the epoxy form and SteelStik just to go over all these gaps and just make sure it's all closed up. It's really simple. Comes in this nice little tube. You just cut off a piece that you're going to be using. So this rest off to the side. You just knead it together. Just gonna mix both parts together, just like any other two-part epoxy. This is just in putty form instead of liquid. Make sure it's all well incorporated. According to the package, this thing has a set time of about 5 minutes and a cure time of about an hour, which is fine for me. It could have been longer. I probably won't be doing the next part until tomorrow anyway. But once you got it all nice and mixed up, just going to come over to the car and we're just going to feed it into those cracks in the metal where the weld isn't solid. Feed it in, and we're going to wrap it around on the inside just to where the tabs meet, just to have it a little bit more secure. Again, I don't entirely trust the welds that I did on this. Like I said earlier, they're good enough for government work, but I'd rather have the extra peace of mind than an extra spot for water to get into or dirt, anything like that. This will be covered up with seam sealer anyway, so that's not too much of an issue, but this will just provide a little bit more structure to this metal here, to these two different pieces. And there we go. Ugly welds made a little less ugly thanks to SteelStik epoxy putty, but again, it's not cosmetic. This is never going to be seen. This is more about, for me, having more structure to it, having it be a little bit more solid, and having it actually be able to be sealed with the seam sealer. Alright, so now that the quick steel is all cured and hardened, I need to grind down this little section here, because that's where the new flare has a lip that will sit flat. Everything up here won't matter because it attaches up here, but down here it needs to be ground down. As always, make sure you got your safety glasses, ear protection if you want it. Put my welding blanket down just to stop any sparks that may shoot toward the car or toward the interior. Alright, so there I was just using a 60 grit metal wheel on the grinder. I'm going to switch over to 60 grit on the Dremel oscillating tool just to have a little bit more precision in sanding it down nice and flat. So before I do the seam sealer, I'm going to hit it with a little bit of touch-up paint that I got from Touch Up Direct, just to get the bare metal covered as another layer of protection against rust. So this tape will also double as the boundary line for the seam sealer, so I'll just go ahead and tape it up in somewhat of a neat fashion. I'll actually get rid of this one here. That's the shape of that one. Okay, so here's the seam sealer I'm going to use to protect everything that we just cut up from water and moisture and everything like that. This is 3M urethane seam sealer 08362. I went with gray just so it matches a little bit, but ultimately it doesn't matter. It's not going to be seen. So I already cut the nozzle, punch a hole in the top. And you take the top. Take the seal off the bottom, screw the nozzle on, just pop it into the gun. So from here, all I'm going to do is run a nice bead all along the edge, and then I'll come back and I'll smooth it all out. Just take the masking tape off and we'll let this cure. There you have it, all seam sealed up, protected against any water and rust from all the cutting and grinding that we did. Alright, so that's going to wrap up part 2. We're going to let that cure and I'll start working on filming for part 3, which is going to be putting the reverse mounted hardware into the flares, drilling the holes for that in the car itself, and then the actual install of the flares with the reverse mounted hardware. And I'm also going to be using 3M VHB tape, adhesion promoter, and everything like that. So hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think, what you would have done differently, anything you learned here, or let me know your favorite color, something. All right, take care, everybody.